Hey yo guys, I'm back here to give you my thoughts on the whole Affliction as a mixed martial art promotion going down. It's sad because of the fact that you had another brand out there doing pay-per-views and trying to actively compete with the UFC now. While I agree, how head on they went with the UFC when they really didn't have that much money to support themselves was wrong. For the fights they put on, they were entertaining, and it basically without Affliction, Fedor wouldn't be as known as he is right now currently. So really, of course, all of this is coming off the heels of Josh Barnett's unfortunate testing positive for a banned substance, most likely another form of a steroid. When he was trying to get his fighter's license in the state of California. I mean, that's the one interesting thing with this whole case, or this whole, when you look back on it, that's the one interesting thing, as he didn't have a fighter's license. Obviously, after the Ivel fight, he didn't have a license anymore. He was just, applying to re-get it so he could have this fight with Fedor August 1st. And he was caught with a banned substance. This was a random test, which we all know the state of California likes to do now, and I think it's really for the long run, it's for the best benefit of MMA. But Barnett got caught, and that really put a whole damper on the Affliction Show with no opponent for Fedor. Vitor Belfort and Jorge Santiago. Well, Vitor Belfort mainly, but really that's not going to sell many pay-per-views. And Affliction at this point, really, they'd been on the ropes. They had to go back to the same venue for the second time in a row, the Honda Center now in Anaheim, California. Seating or tickets being sold had declined from the first event to the second event, and was most likely going to decline for the third event even more so. So really, they were in a big situation there. They were trying to get fighters. A lot of heavyweight fighters were throwing their name in the hat. Or names were being tossed around. I mean, there was Brett Rogers, Bobby Lashley, Fabricio Verdum. Vitor Belfort even said, look, I'll go up and fight at heavyweight, which I don't know how well, that would have been for a health benefit. I mean, trying to make all this cut and then, having to put on all of 15 pounds in less than a week. I don't think that's really healthy. Even Tank Abbott and Don Fry threw their name in there. Now, in reality, Lashley wasn't going to do it because he was in Orlando doing stuff for TNA for tapings for their Impact show. Don Fry has a fight coming up with King Mo, and I don't think he would really like to fight two fights in a row. I mean, yeah, he's a tough dude and all, but I don't know how well that would be for him for the M1 show. So most likely, Verdum didn't want it. Brett Rogers didn't want to take. He probably wanted to take the fight, but he didn't because an untrained Brett Rogers, that's gonna hurt himself in there. You can't knock Brett Rogers if he were to take the fight and losing, because come on, his only loss would have been to Fedor. But still, I think everyone wanted a top level opponent, who was in prime shape. Like I said, Verdum didn't want it, Rogers didn't want it, and plus you had the investment that Strikeforce and Showtime put in on him. Like, we don't want to damage our prospect just for this pay-per-view, and we don't know how well this company's going to last. And obviously, with everything that went up on finding out all this stuff, that was probably going to be their last show. I mean, if you just look the fact that the UFC didn't even give a damn about this show taking place. Normally, they like to counter-promote with Affliction, counter show against Affliction. That's something they didn't want to do in the show. They realized that it wasn't going to last, and plus, Affliction had offered to give up this show. Like, they were going to give, I believe they were going to give Fedor and Barnett on a UFC show down the line. I don't know when, and they would cease to exist as a promotion due to the fact. Cease to positions promotion only if Dana White apologized to Tom Atencio publicly for calling him an idiot or a t-shirt guy, which we all know Dana White, that's not going to happen. So with that happening and realizing that they didn't realize how long their show was going to last and offering these fights, and then you had Showtime like, look, got to do something here. they decided to pull out for promoting the show, and basically once you had no Showtime, which was a big investor, getting the good production values and everything of that nature, plus HDNet, they were going to stick around, but it's more Showtime. That basically spelled the demise of the promotion, and then, later in the day, it was believed that Affliction was going to be a big sponsor with Strikeforce, but Strikeforce really didn't go for it, so they went to the UFC, which they mainly did, and then, hey, Affliction's now a sponsor once again with the UFC, which, I think is probably better for Affliction as a whole. I mean, the name brand was losing probably too much money in the mixed martial art promotion, so that's just, I guess, my thoughts on it, and now it's basically free pickings for both the UFC and Strikeforce. Where do I think Fedor will go? I think that's the biggest question. I doubt he'll go to the UFC. There's still a believability in me because Fedor wants big money in the UFC. In North America is the only place you're going to get that. But Fedor, he likes to do that cross-promotion stuff. He likes to fight in Japan. I think he may go to Dream more so, and plus Dream would give him, the Dream contract would give him more opportunity to do his Sambo stuff. So I don't know about that. I definitely see Vitor Belfort going back to the UFC, as they made a pitch for him, and I think Belfort will obviously go for it. Gegard Mousasi says he wants to go to the UFC. I think, what, let's have Gegard go back. He'd have to go back to middleweight, I think, to be successful. I think he can be successful at 205, not saying that, but I think, for me, I think the fight I would most like to see is, Mousasi versus Silva. But really, that's just going to be the long run of the Affliction promotion. When you look back, it was, I guess, bad from the get-go. Bad business moves, giving way too much money to, fighters like Tim Sylvia and Paul Buentello when, they could have given money to a fighter who means something like a Tito Ortiz. Tito at this point in his career is probably not worth the money, but you're trying to be the number 2 guys out there. You need a big name, and Tito is that. And you had Fedor out there, which, he, at that point he had been established, but you need to give him something to show the whole world what this guy can do, and he obviously proved it, that he's the best fighter in mixed martial arts in the world. But, it was just mismanaged from the front. I mean, looking at their first pay-per-view, they put too much money in the fighters, and plus they didn't really need to have I believe it was Megadeth there. Megadeth, it came better off probably for the live audience, but it doesn't come off well for pay-per-view. I mean, it's just something that you don't need the bands there for. I know what you're trying to do with the alternative stuff, but still, and it's the fact that you had to keep running two of both your shows in the same venue, that doesn't seem good to me at all. And the fact that you didn't have as much interest in people from your first show to the second, not a good thing at all. But yeah, I think, like I said, it's going to be open-ranged for the contracts, so... and it's even believed that some of these fights from the Affliction trilogy show will take place in M1 on their August 28th show, which is headlined by King Mo versus Don Fry. So, I mean, at least some of those fights get to happen, but I mean, in the long run, the fighters and the fans are the ones that get to suffer. I mean, think about it. All these fighters have taken all their time out to train for 6 months for a fight, and now it's not even going to happen. May not even happen. I mean, some of them may happen in M1, but that's just a maybe. So that's a very unfortunate thing for these fighters. And the fans, I mean, a lot of these fans were gearing up for a new, the other guys out there, what their product can put together. So we'll see with that. It's not like losing the Affliction shows a huge loss for the month of August at least. Because, I mean, we have the Strikeforce Chrono versus... Cyborg and two UFC pay-per-views. So, yeah, that's basically the whole rundown there. I guess, it's good to see Affliction come back as the big UFC sponsor because, they're the most well-known t-shirt brand out there, and you incorporate that with the UFC, getting their fighters' names back on there, and cool designs. So, I think that's really something I can say there. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I guess Affliction's in long-term status would be, when you're looking back at them, they ran 2 shows and canceled 2 shows, so that sums it up right there. But it'll be interesting to see where these fighters go. Of course, the UFC also had a big day that day as they announced that Tito Ortiz is coming back. Now, it's not 100% confirmed yet, but it's more than likely going to be. I mean, I could have told you this from last July when the UFC, when he's like, look, I want big money, and the only place he's going to get big money is he's going to get it in the UFC. Affliction didn't have it at the time, and they overspent on certain fighters that they really didn't need to, as I previously mentioned. Elite XC, they didn't have the money for the man. Hell, they were bankrupt, really. They were getting financed by Showtime and CBS. And Strikeforce really wasn't a player in mixed martial arts at the time. And even now, they don't have the money to give it to Tito at this rate. So that's really, I guess, what I got to say. You know, leave your feedback on your thoughts on Affliction and the whole demise. But really, that's it for me. I'm out. Peace.